welcome everybody to our continuing series of virtual Zoom programs. We try to put on at least a program a month, and there's also a statewide program that the various chapters are taking turns putting on. Last night was a great program on manatees. So keep an eye on our Facebook channel, our Facebook page for upcoming events, as well as our website. So our speaker tonight is Nancy Mora from she is the president of the Tampa Bay Raptor Center, the Raptor Center of Tampa Bay. And as I understand, Nancy is a native Floridian, and I'm not sure how long that she's been treating and taking care of bald eagles, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the program over to her and thank her for coming in tonight and putting on our presentation.
Thanks, Jim. Tonight we're going to talk about bald eagles, and I've been taking care of bald eagles for about 7 years. Very first bird I ever rescued was a bald eagle. I was the coordinator for Audubon Eagle Watch and got a call saying that one of our baby eagles was on the ground and could I go pick it up. And I said I thought I was only supposed to be watching it and recording data, but I did go pick it up. I took it to the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey and followed it through. And the next eagle I rescued was just a few months later, which was, can you hear me?
Yes, Nancy, we can hear you fine.
Yep. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So the next bald eagle that I rescued was at MacDill Air Force Base on the 4th of July. And that bird had a broken wing, and we were able to release it at Picnic Island. And since then, I have either helped rescue, rehabilitate, transport, or release over 90 bald eagles. We've had 5 here in the last 7 days. So they're a wonderful bird. I've been fascinated by them ever since I really started to see them locally in the area. We are lucky that the bald eagle population has grown to a point that we certainly, can see them almost anywhere that you live in this area. So if we want to look at the next slide, eagle facts, this just gives you a little bit of information, and I'm not going to read all of it to you. You've got the class, which of course it's a bird, and all of the birds of prey fall into the same order. And whether that be an owl or a bird of prey, a diurnal bird. So they, the word actually comes from Greek, and I always have a hard time. I don't ever know if I pronounce it right. Haliotos, but as I always say, eagle. Our eagles, our bald eagles, are definitely sea eagles, and what that means is that they eat a lot of fish. So we have 2 subspecies, and the one that we have, is primarily, of course, south of the Canadian border. But the difference between the 2 is really size. The feather quality of the birds, shouldn't say quality, the feather layers, even though they contain the same amount of feathers as our eagles do, are just thicker to provide them protection from the cold. And because of that, they're also bigger. Typically here in Florida, our eagles, the biggest eagle we have gotten in for rehab was right around 10 pounds. We had one last week that was 9.6, so coming as a close second. And the eagles in Alaska can typically be, several pounds larger. So, the good thing about them is, if we, to go to the next slide, is that they really are making a comeback. We know that the primary reason that the bald eagle population was decimated in the United States was due to the pesticide DDT. It was banned in 1972. And at that point, there were really very few pairs of bald eagles in the lower 48 states, because Alaska is not a agricultural state. DDT wasn't there, and DDT really was not used heavily in Alaska. So the Alaskan eagle population has always remained strong. But once that DDT started to get into to actually being fed to humans, they said, geez, we got to stop. It's in breast milk. It's actually, you know, penetrating humans. They're digesting it. They're keeping it in their system. And it is actually, you know, being fed to their infants. And so they stopped the use of DDT worldwide. Now, I can tell you DDT is still used in Africa in places, but in general, you know, the bald eagles were able to, once they stopped DDT, they really started to make their comeback. And they were able to reclaim their the natural area in the United States by the late 1990s. And then in 2007, they were actually removed from the Endangered Species Act. And at that point, there was 1,218 eagle nests in the lower 48 states. Now, I'm happy to tell you, we have 1,218 eagle nests between Polk County, Hillsborough County, Pinellas, Manatee, and Polk, probably within that area, and maybe extending to a few more, you know, counties. But we have a heavy eagle population, especially in Polk County. You can see that just you know, next slide is just a nice picture of a bald eagle in flight, and you'll see that throughout the presentation. We are fortunate that we have a lot of people that really watch out for the bald eagles, and they're very open and share their photographs. And we'll talk about Eagle Watch shortly, which is an Audubon-based program, but that's really how these people have come together. And really, I have to be honest and say how we came together as a rescue group. We are dedicated to birds of prey, although, you know, I can tell you have baby squirrels waiting to be fed anxiously for when this presentation is over. But they, the bald eagles are what binds the Raptor Center of Tampa Bay. That binds a lot of our volunteers together. And then the photographs throughout the presentation are from volunteers who still are actively out watching and watching out for the eagles, and more than a way of just kind of keeping track of them. They keep track of the data. They report that to Audubon. Audubon keeps track of how the bald eagles are doing. But these folks are dedicated. If one of their eagles is on the ground or in a fight, or the baby gets down out of the nest, they have made a commitment to us as an organization. We can get to any bald eagle within our rescue distance, which goes all the way down to Highlands County within 1 hour. So if you look at the next slide, it shows you the map of bald eagles, and you can kind of see where they are. And one thing that you'll notice by looking at the little dots on the map of Florida is that they live near rivers and lakes and in the Gulf and Atlantic coastlines. You can see that these birds, as we said, they're sea eagles. They love fish. And so they're dotting the coastline, and they're dotting, you know, around our major rivers, lakes, and streams. So you can see them on Wiki Watchy. You can see them in the rivers, the main rivers that run all the way to the Gulf. So, and certainly proof that the Endangered Species Act works. You know, we have more eagles today, and really are able to watch them almost anywhere you go. And so much so that I'll tell you how you can volunteer for Eagle Watch in Clearwater. Certainly, I'll show you how you can sign up for that at the end of the presentation. How can you find out where the nests are in Hillsborough County? An interesting thing has taken place, and you can see on the next slide. It shows you a map of Audubon Florida's Eagle Watch Nest app. Now, the bald eagle has made such a good recovery that in 2017, the Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission made their last flyover of bald eagle nest. They no longer are flying over. They're no longer maintaining their bald eagle nest map. That actually has been turned over to the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey. And Sean Lee Breeding, who's the coordinator there for Eagle Watch, she actually maintains this nest. And you can see an example on this slide of what it's got dots all over the state. All of those dots represent a nest. Now, it may not be an active nest. It may be a nest that just at one time was recorded, but it will show you all the active nests. And when you touch one, it brings up this window that'll then give you additional information, and you can see, where the nest is. You can see if this nest is being actively monitored, what's going on with it. This happens to be a nest that I pulled up in Hillsborough County, and I know that there's chicks in the nest. So it's really easy to find out where eagle nests are by going to this map on Audubon's website and actually finding the eagle nest in your area so that you can find an active one to actually monitor. So I know there's a lot of people out there. For me, it's a little strange being on presentations on Zoom where we can't have a lot of interaction, because that's more my style of saying, hey, how big is a bald eagle, and kind of getting some people together. And I know I've seen some comments, but how much do you think a bald eagle weighs? Does anybody have any clue about that? They don't weigh as much as you think they are. I told you the 10 pounds. I'd mentioned that a little bit earlier, that they weigh, the biggest one we've had here is 10 pounds. But they do have a wingspan of up to about 7.5 feet. 8 pounds, that's right, Lou. Yeah, exactly. Typically our female bald eagles, we kind of judge them by the size. And the males definitely are smaller. And I'm going to show you a picture of that. During this presentation, we can go up to some of these nests when we're monitoring the babies, and you see them next to each other, and you're thinking, how could one baby be so much bigger than the other? And it's the male versus the female. So males typically come into us, weighing around 7 pounds. Anything under 7 pounds from a rehab perspective to us is worrisome from a perspective of them being too skinny. We know that male and female eagles look alike. They're exactly alike, except the girls are bigger than boys. They definitely, exhibit what is called reverse sexual size dimorphism, which, like I said, just as I tell the kids, it just means the girls are bigger than boys. And if you look at the next slide, you're going to see some eagles I found in a forest. And these are babies sitting next to each other, and you can see the female versus the male. Very easy to tell which bird is a female and which bird is a male.
Hey, Nancy, I'm sorry to interrupt. About half of the screen for your video is being covered. I don't know if it's, finger. Okay. There we go.
You
now
have
we
to
can
say
see
something. Yeah, I couldn't see my video. So there you go. Is that better? Is it this
No,
way?
that's worse. There we go. Now we can see you.
Different hand. Okay. So you can see on this video, you can look at the difference between the female and the male. You really see quite a bit of difference, and they are adapted for survival. To me, bald eagles, they have such great tools. All birds of prey do. On eagles, they're exemplified because they're a larger bird. But if we go to the next slide, we'll cover some of those things. And certainly one of the best things that eagles have is keen eyesight. They can see so well that I always laugh sometimes when I've seen folks that are down, that live at the bottom of like a communication tower, and we'll tell them, if no one's really supposed to be around the nest, and they'll be like, but we're around the nest. And I'm like, but they know you're the neighbors. And they're like, they can tell me from you. And I can tell you, eagles have very good facial recognition, and they can tell one person from another, just like corvids or crows can. And my crow just sounds off at that time. So they can see 3 or 4 times better than people can. And that allows them to be able to hunt their prey from the air. They also have amazing feet. And just recently I posted a Facebook post that just showed all the feet of the bald eagles that we've gotten in the last 7 days. And their talons are huge, and they have about 350 pounds of gripping strength in their feet, which is pretty amazing. And their feet are just phenomenal. When you actually hold a bald eagle, when we rescue them, you can see that in the picture in the upper right. Those are actually Paige's feet, and those every picture in there is Paige from the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey. And but their talons are large and really, really thick. And The reason I say that is a hawk's talons are long, but they're much thinner. And the talons of a eagle, very much like the talons of an osprey, are used to catch fish. So I call them big fish hooks. So they're these big, huge, long curved talons that really catch fish well. Or in the case of a bald eagle, steal fish well. Bald eagles like to steal their fish from ospreys in particular. Their beaks are particularly strong. And it's interesting having a close-up look at over 90 bald eagles. I can tell you some of them have smaller beaks and some of them have these huge honking beaks. But the thing that I have found that's always interesting is if you look at the picture at the beak and you see that tip, the very tip of the beak, it doesn't look as sharp as it is. But if that tip of that beak touches you an ungloved hand in any kind of way, you will bleed. It is very sharp. That you don't really notice that on Paige because she lives in captivity. But wild eagles, when they come in, boy, I'll tell you what, the top of that little tip of that beak touches your hand and it draws blood. It's very, very sharp. Their legs are super strong. Their legs really help to catch and kill their prey. And their legs are also, we get bald eagles that have been in fights, and the muscles in their legs are tremendous, and that's where they nail each other. They have a tendency to nail each other in the legs and hold on to their thighs like unbelievable. They also have an ability to eat super fast, and like most birds, they have a crop, and they store food in the crop, which allows them to come across prey, eat it really fast, and then store that food and digest it as their body needs it. So birds of prey in general, but as I said, the eagle is just to me exemplified because of the size and strength of the bird. You can go to the next slide. It's just an eagle probably sounding off that not so happy that the Eagle Watch volunteer maybe was there. But one of the things you can also see that's just so fabulous on a bald eagle is those feathers and how every single feather is tipped so that it accentuates itself. And they use their feathers to thermoregulate. It keeps them cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So fascinating properties that feathers have. Eagles don't have any kind of iridescent properties to their feathers like a turkey vulture. You can see we rescued a turkey vulture just recently. And if you look at the little white tips on the feathers on the wing, the turkey vulture, when we saw the picture of it, all we saw was the wing. And they said, geez, it looks like it looks like that it's an eagle. And when we got there, it was a turkey vulture, is it actually what it was. So the food in their crop lasts. Somebody made a comment, how long does the food in their crop last? And generally a female eagle eats about 300 grams of food a day. You might say, okay, what is that? That's a really, really big rat or two medium rats or part of a small rabbit or most of a fish. 300 grams for the females, 200 grams for the male. And they eat that, and that slowly digests through their body through the next 24 hours until it's time to hunt again in the morning. So, we talked about what eagles eat. If we go to the next slide, they really are opportunists. They're opportunist feeders. And what does that mean? That means that they will eat fish, they will steal fish, they will eat carrion, they will eat roadkill, they will eat stuff out of the dump. If they find food, they will eat it. Basically, they do only eat raw food, or should only eat raw food. I should say they do eat small mammals like squirrels and rabbits, and they also eat other birds, although I can tell you from watching eagles for a long time, I don't see them with a lot of smaller birds. I do see them eating waterfowl, like coots and black-bellied whistling ducks and things like that, depending on what is close to their nest. They definitely like the ducks, and you'll find certain birds position themselves in areas where there's a lot of ducks in the winter. And it's just for that same very reason. As I said, we've been fortunate to be watching eagles for a long time. I watched eagles for about 3 years before I rescued one. And so the next slide shows you one of these eagles coming right out of the tree. That's pictured by Roger Newell, a great Eagle Watch volunteer for a long time, and met Roger through Eagle Watch, and he's one of our very best volunteers still, and has rescued a lot of bald eagles. Unfortunately, as you can see on the next slide, they prey on dead animals, and this was also Roger's picture, and we spared you the picture of what the eagle was actually eating. He stood up and stood away, and it allowed us to crop out his dinner. So they come in, they stay, some of them stay in Florida year round, but most of them are here through October 1st through about May 15th. And they do that. They come here to nest, and they like dead pine trees, live pine trees, live big, huge longleaf pines would be their favorite, I think. I have seen them nest in cypress trees. I've also seen them nest in oak trees further south, but they've begun to nest in a variety of man-made structures. And the photo that's on the picture is a cell tower that's at the corner of 301, basically where 301 and I-75 come together. These eagles have since moved off this tower to another tower that's very close by. But they nest on platforms, and we don't have any platforms in our county, but there's definitely platforms in Polk County and in the Everglades and some other places where we have eagles nesting. Sadly, cell towers, power line towers, communication towers of all kinds have become one of the sources that they like to nest on, because they really want the view. They want the height. They like to nest at about 100 feet. So the cell towers, the nest that's on this slide right here, sits at 270 feet. So we've given them this great view. These eagles actually sitting up at 301 and I-75 there, were able to look at Tampa Bay from where they were very easily and see every lake around and figure out exactly where they wanted to hunt. The next slide shows us a variety of areas, nests in the area where they have been. You can see there they are on a platform. That's in Lake Kissimmee. Beautiful eagles in a tree. The eagles that are on the drum on the cell tower are at Fort DeSoto, and they have a tendency to nest there every single year. Power line tower nests, the nests in the very middle, those birds moved off that tower, moved to a tree, moved back to the tower, weren't successful, moved to a tree. Water treatment next door, the Tampa water actually disturbed them. Their nest failed, and they're actually back on this tower in the same crummy place. And you can see some of the tree nests that are here as well. But when you look at the tower nest, the thing that you notice is there's a lot of other stuff up in that tower. You know, if you look at the bottom left, there's this big wire that goes through, and these birds have to navigate that, not only coming in and out multiple times a day with food, but they also, the babies, when they're learning to fly, they have to learn to navigate that too. And there is a great study that Audubon has right now, where when we bring eagles in for rehabilitation, if they're babies, they are banded with an auxiliary band. They're banded with a U.S. Fish and Wildlife band, but they're also banded with either a green band or a black band. So if you see an eagle that has one of these auxiliary bands on, it's really important to go to report a banded bird and report it. Because this is a study, a long-term study, to see if these birds that are born in towers will nest in towers, or whether they will seek a natural substrate for their nest. So their nests are huge. You can see that in the picture. And the next slide shows you just a couple of eagles bringing in a little bit of material, but nests can weigh up to a ton. I know there's a nest that's in the Valrico area that I bet is 10 feet across and 5 feet deep. I have no idea how much it weighs, but it's got to weigh a lot. The eggs, interestingly enough, and if you watch the nest cams, you can see this, where eggs are laid in this little teeny tiny place they make in the middle of the nest. And a eagle egg, interestingly enough, is not a whole lot bigger than a chicken egg. One of the things we say about them, their nest is 6 feet in diameter. But the thing about the actual birds is an easy thing to remember about them. They're the fastest growing bird in North America from hatch, and they grow from 3 inches to 3 feet in 3 months. And that's about what they do. You see a great picture in the next slide of a bird carrying in the sticks. And as an Eagle Watch volunteer, I can tell you, you see the funniest things. Your eagles have personalities, and this one bringing in a long stick. Sometimes they'll bring in little teeny sticks, and they'll come and they'll stuff it in the nest. And then the female will come and she'll get the stick and she'll move it and she'll stick it someplace else, or he'll bring a little stick and she'll sit up there and just, with their high little, cackle voice, just really give him a hard time about, I can't believe you brought that stick in. But the next picture, this again shows you, the one eagle sitting in the nest and the other eagle up in the tree. And this is the time of year, if you want to see bald eagles, this is the time of year to see this exact kind of thing that you see in this picture. Their young are already hatched, and this has happened around the state of Florida. Very unusual for this year. In the 10 years that I have been watching bald eagles, this is the earliest I have ever seen them hatch. I do only keep track of the eagles in Hillsborough County, but every single nest has babies, and some of them are already 4 weeks old. And that is really unusual. Right now is usually the time that they're just beginning to hatch. And we used to have maybe one baby by Christmas. Every nest just about had babies before Christmas this year. So the wonderful thing about eagles is I always remember one of the first times I saw them, there was a little child with me, and she looked up and she said, "Look, Mommy, there's chocolate eagles up there." And when that little girl said that to the mother, I thought about that. And you can see on the next page on the next slide, what she really meant. You can see there's some chocolate eagles in the nest. And you can see these eagles nested in this dead tree for years, and they since moved into another tree. That tree died of the pine beetles, and these birds very sadly now live in a communication tower. They live up on a power line tower is where they've moved. They usually have 1 to 4 eggs. It's usually only 2 eggs that hatch. Occasionally we get 3, and sometimes, of course, there's only 1. I have never seen 4 eagles in a nest that survived to fledge. I have seen 3 do it several times, but typically you have 2, and 90% of the time, the thing that's really interesting, they're male and female. One's a male, one's a female. 90% of the time, you don't have you don't have 2 males or 2 females in a nest, which I find fascinating. But how many birds are there and how successful they are is there an adequate food supply? Are there, there's limiting capacities of the land, and are they living in a developed area where there's not as much food as there used to be? You'll find a reduced number of birds in the nest, but these birds, then this particular picture, live right on this edge of Tampa Bay, and they fledge 2 birds year after year after year. They good parents, and they've been very successful. Both males and females are equal parents, and they're a lot like humans in the fact that some of the females are really good parents, some of the males are really good parents, and in some families both are. You'll find in some families that one eagle has the ability to keep their cool much better than the other one does, so they will not abandon their young. If let's say an intruder comes into the area, another young eagle perhaps comes into the area, you'll find an eagle where let's just say mom, for example, she's going to sit on the nest, she's not going to move. And then you have the male that anytime anything comes near the nest, he doesn't even care if his baby's 2 days old and he's going to be freezing cold. If he gets off the nest, he's going after the bird. So they have their personalities. We call it changing of the guard. And really what happens, especially when the eagles are young, before you can start to see them, is that one eagle's always in the nest, and that eagle gets up on the side of the nest. The other eagle gets down on the babies, sorry about that, it gets down on the baby, the nest, and then the other one takes off and goes hunting, or goes and stretches its legs or stretches its feathers. Sometimes they will sit on these eggs up to 4 hours, and you will see the bird that's sitting in the nest on top of the babies or the eggs start looking around at the sky, and then start getting vocal, like, hello, hello, I've been sitting here for 4 hours. Can somebody please relieve me? Eggs hatch in 33 to 35 days. And the thing that's interesting is in all birds of prey, one egg hatches and the parents have a day or two to take care of them, and then the second egg hatches. And so that's typically true with most birds of prey. Some other really cool things about eagles, you can look at the next slide and see a little eaglet that's maybe about 4 to 5 weeks old there in the picture. But eagles are monogamous. They do mate for life. When we rescue them, we have all kinds of things to take into consideration about what time of year it is. Do they have young in the nest? What's going to happen? In bald eagles, if one of the eagles passes away, the remaining bird will find a new mate. I can tell you that barn owls are the only owls that I know of that really are true to their mate, and sometimes will just stop eating when their mate dies and will themselves to death. Eagles are not that way. They definitely will find a new mate. Some of our concerns when we take them into rehab is their mate going to find a new mate before we get them back home, where they should be. Certainly nests are generational. You can have both eagles get killed or die, and another pair of eagles will come in. But one thing that you do see that happening, they live a violent life. And you can see a pair of eagles come in, and let's say they live there for 10 or 15 years, and one of them gets killed. Well, when they seek a mate, they're going to, who's available? The youngsters, right? That's who's available. So they'll seek a mate of a bird that's 5 years old, just coming into sexual maturity. Well, they live together for 5 to 10 years, and then the old one passes away. The new one finds a new mate, and the cycle continues. So if it's the area that's important, it's not the nest. They can build one of these huge nests in 2 weeks. But if the area is food rich and it's a good habitat for them, they can live there for generations, and generations of eagles can share actually a nest. So what happens when eagles get around each other, and why do we get a lot of eagles? They fight. Loss of habitat because of development is tremendous, and bald eagles are fierce. Sometimes people say to me, why are they our national bird? I'm like, because they're big and they're mean. That's why. They typically have battles in the air. They have battles on the ground. They have battles in the water. If you are in their territory, they are not going to be happy, if you're another eagle. And these two particular eagles in this picture were in Dunedin. I'm in Brandon. They stayed like that from the entire time it took me to drive from Brandon to Dunedin. If you notice the eagle that's on the right, see how it has dark swatches in the tail? This bird is 4 years old. This is a bird that's just coming into sexual maturity, raging with hormones, and threatened the adult's nest, which was right down the street. Now, I can tell you the young one got away. The adult went into rehab, and she was only there for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then she was able to return to her nest and breed successfully that way. So some eagles are just meaner than others. We certainly have lost a lot of habitat, and that causes a lot of disruption. As I said, they build their nest quickly, but the nest is really, it's all about the area and the food supply. Is there water available? And in that water, is there an adequate supply of fish and water birds to be able to feed them and their babies? So the land area and the cleanliness of the water and the viability of the land overall is what's important to the pair. So when you see eagles moving out, if that's never a good sign, but they like to call a place home that has clean water, lots of fish, lots of birds, and little things for them to eat. So again, the next slide just shows you a picture of another, a beautiful bald eagle. And if you go, do females fight females or males fight males? I find that, yeah, that's true. They usually do fight between the same sex. However, they will chase anyone out of their territory. And recently we picked up a bald eagle from Lake Wales, and I mean to tell you, they had beat the snot out of this bird, and he was only about 7 pounds. So I do believe a female probably got a hold of him, and he unfortunately succumbed to his injuries after tons of care. But just to give you an idea, his major injury was a talon wound that went through the back of the scalp to the back of the eye. So extremely strong. So even though I do tend to see them fighting with someone about their same size, any eagle that comes into a pair's territory is at risk to be attacked. So if you go out and watch bald eagles, like I said, we can tell you where a lot of them are. And what are some of the kind of things that we say, what's good eagle watching etiquette, and what are some of the things you should do, while you're out there? And one thing, and this is true with a lot of birds in general, is that if you remain, excuse me, right next to your vehicle, it's like a bird blind. So our birds see vehicles all the time. So if you open the door and kind of stand next to your vehicle, you stand less of a chance of spooking them. Our general rule of thumb is to say 350 feet or 100 meters, which what that means is you're standing at one field, and right one goalpost, and you want the eagles to be at the other. And that's just a general goal. That's the bald eagle management guidelines. But through, our spotting scopes and these great lenses we have, binoculars, you can see well. The thing that I would say to you about eagles is they're skittish. They are not like a hawk that will sit there and stare you down. Eagles are not birds that like to be close to people, and just trying to get a little bit closer to them. If you ever do anything that flushes the bird, where all of a sudden your behavior caused the bird to fly, you're too close. Now, eagles put a lot of space between themselves and the ground. And there are some eagles that they could care less if you're there. They're in urban areas. They're nesting in cell towers. They're across the street from the 7-Eleven. And if you want to set your scope up right next to there, that's fine with them. But then the more rural you get, the more out in the country you get, the more of these beautiful tree nests you're looking for, right? They don't want to hear you slamming the doors or yelling or, hey, what about this? Or, hey, look at the bird, you just don't want to do anything to make it fly. And that's particularly true for photographers. There are birds that are on private property in restricted areas, and, they're completely off limits. They're completely off limits to us, FWC, and everyone else. I always laugh and say, pull completely off the road and park in designated areas. And if you get really excited, please make sure to put your car in park before you jump out. Like this nest that was on 301, it was easy. It was easy to kind of get too close to 301, because the further away from the tower you are, the easier it was to see the nest. So I just worry about it because it was really easy to kind of get too close to traffic. And, I have friends that say, hey, we're going to go watch eagles. Can I take my dog? I'm like, no, that's nowhere near an active bald eagle nest when they're nesting. Dogs spook them because dogs are certainly a threat to them. So that kind of concludes what I have for a presentation. I'm willing.